Okay, thank you very much, everyone. It's for me a pleasure to be part of this seminar uh, season, and I found a nice place to discuss our interest in migration from the economics perspective. So, uh, just to a quick start, the why did I got involved with regularization programs? Mainly because of my nationality. I am Venezuelan, and uh, we have been benefited recently in Colombia, Chile, and Peru, for example, with this kind of regularization programs. Then I wanted to study the impact of them, and at the end I decided, okay, if we're going to do this, why don't we study the program as a whole and not only for Venezuela? No, that's why we are trying to answer to get into regularization programs. No? And then the first question we're making is if there is a pull factor, no? If it is attracting more migrants, and we are using as a destination countries all the OECD countries. This is a paper that I am working with my supervisor, Inmaculada Martinez Arzoso. She is professor here in Göttingen and also in Jaume I in Castellón, Spain. So first, let's go deep into the motivation. First, these kind of policies, the regularizations, are a very common tool to deal with an important amount of undocumented migrants. No, so when countries have important amount of undocumented migrants, this is one of the options they have. No, and then it's a policy that has been implemented for at least 80 years, as far as we have recorded. The first one we recorded is in France in 1945, and it has been implemented in all countries, in all continents, and most countries of our data set, no, of our OECD countries. Uh, why we are trying to answer this question about why the pull factor effect is because governments fears that once they use this tool to solve one problem, they are making the problem bigger. So this is like an obvious fear, and is it appears in plenty of reports of the migration outlook generated by the OECD. So uh, also it's a natural fear. No? However, the literature has done some research about it, of course. I am not the first one digging into this. However, the results are somehow contradicting. So they are not always in the same direction. Sometimes they say even it reduces the willingness to migrate, and and in other cases it has no impact, like La Ramona in the 2005 Spanish regularization, or or they find what we expect in the literature, like Wehinger in 2014, that he found effectively there was a pull effect. However, his data set was on not reliable. He say so because his dependent variable was undocumented migrants. So the inflow of illegal migrants. So this data was not reliable, as he said. So even the one who found the most relevant findings answering this question, he himself set this handicap. No, then as we can say that the pull factor of the regularization answering this question is still a research gap. That's why we are digging into this topic. No? However, we have to explain first, because every time I present this, there is always a lot of doubts about what is regularization program about. And then we find that it provides legal status to undocumented migrants, no? And especially people who entered illegally, or that overstayed. In this, including like students that once the visa period ended, they overstayed, or tourists, or even, let's say, we could include here the rejected asylum seekers, no? So people enter illegally or who enter legally but overstayed the visa period, they are the target population. No? It is important that we define that it's not part of the laws reigning in this particular country, no? So it's like a one-shot program. It's not a law, a permanent law. It's a one-shot program, and so we have to differentiate this from, for example, the arraigo law in Spain, or modifications in the migration laws, no? So it's a one-shot program, and it runs for a limited period of time. So this is the main difference with the law. Is usually few months, sometimes some years, few years, and it targets a specific category of undocumented migrants. Sometimes it targets only rural workers. Sometimes it targets informal workers. Sometimes it targets specific nationalities, which is very important for our identification strategy. Then we have this, it always classify who is benefited. For example, it could be benefiting only rejected asylum seekers, which is very common in Europe, and or the other categories, like the other overstayed, or those who enter illegally. Then I want you to show you like how it works in time. For example, our regularization announced in December 15 of 2023. The government usually is like a surprise. It's unexpected most of the time. And the government, of course, answering and trying to give a solution to a significant amount of undocumented migrants. Then they announce this policy where they decide that they will regularize a specific segment of this group. And this, for example, one of the main characteristics of regularization programs is they set a date in advance. That is the deadline, the threshold between who is potential beneficiary and who not. Whoever arrived before April the 1st of 2021, so it is like almost 3 years before, then these are the potential beneficiary. Anyone arriving after this date is not a potential beneficiary. Then they said in this announcement in December, they say that you can register in the program. You have to go to office A and B, and you have to bring these documents. Everything is declared in the announcement, all the characteristics, all the requirements. And then also they set the periods from when you can do it until when you can do it. So in this case, 12 months, and is only for people who entered the country, in this case, at least 33 months in advance. This number is not random, it's the average in our sample. This 33 months is the average period of being illegal, undocumented resident in this country, in order to be beneficiary of the program. Then as I said before, all of these people that arrive after April the 1st, or who illegal status started after April the 1st, are excluded from the program. The idea of this is that they want to avoid the pull factor effects, no? The pull effect of the policy. Then, since the announcement, we can say there is a pull effect, and there is a characteristic that change in this country that it makes it more attractive for potential migrants to migrate to this country because, for example, they say it they can assume that this is a more friendly environment for undocumented migrants, and also they could assume that even though they are not going to be benefiting directly from this policy, they could be benefited in a potential next regularization program. Then this is somehow, I hope, is more or less clear how a regularization program works. Then one problem that we find trying to answer this question is that there is no a data set where you can go and you can see all the regularization programs when were implemented, etc. And then we face the challenge to, in order to answer this question in a broad sense, not only one particular country, as most of the other studies of the pull effect, then we decided to create a data set. So the data set that we created is what we call the RECMIC data set. It is trying to, is covering the 38 destinations, the OECD countries. And then for each country, we have created, we search the whole history of them, and then we try to build this exhaustive, as most exhaustive as possible, of all the programs, regularization programs implemented for these countries, no? And then, for example, for Australia, we have, and for each of the country, we have which countries of origin were benefited, which nationalities were benefited, the year it was implemented, the number of people benefited. We make a classification of the kind of regularization programs. For example, we call general when it includes workers, and we call humanitarian when it only includes rejected asylum seekers. And then we focus more on the general because it's not associated with the political situation back home. So we focus our research here. And we also have the announcement date and the window time to apply, this 1 year in the example I showed you before. And this is a very important variable. This is the time required as the minimum time required as a legal migrant in order to be a potential beneficiary. As I told you before, the 33 months minimum requirement in the example in the previous slide. Then we did that. We did this for the 38 countries, and we built this. For example, this is a map and of how many times has been implemented in the 80 years period. And we have, for example, of these, only for these general regularizations, we have 136, and there are like a little bit less than 200 for if we include the humanitarian regularizations. And in average, every OECD country did it 3.5 times. And most of the general regularization programs were implemented in the last 30 years. Okay. I wanted to comment you something here. Here, for example, I create this difference between general, humanitarian, but also mechanisms. This mechanism is in order to let the reader know that we consider them, but we cannot consider them, we cannot classify them as a program, but as a mechanism because it's a permanent change in the law. So in this case, for example, in 2002 in Belgium. Okay, then let's go into the most relevant part. Um, Now we understood what is a regularization program, how is the data set. We have we constructed a panel data of origins and destination pairs as a X and years as a T. So we have a panel, we are doing a gravity model following what trade and migration literature usually does, like Maida and Bertoli, etc. They did, and we have uh, other authors. I think Fernandez is here uh, in this presentation, and so we're relying, trying to control for high dimensional fixed effects, try to control for multilateral resistance and omitted variable following Anderson and Yotov. And we are using Poisson-Seydo maximum likelihood to keep zeros in estimations and deal with heterogeneity. So the base model we are using is as a PPML, as I told you, and we're testing the regularization program as a dummy in the year T minus one, and we are controlling additionally for the number of months required to be as I told you, the 33 months required as the months required as illegal, as undocumented migrant in order to be benefited, because this is a interesting deterrent used by policymakers. Of course, we have the income ratio, origin destination, and very important, the bilateral network. So the like the diaspora size of the origin country and destination. All of these variables are in T minus one, and we have the origin time, destination time, and origin destination fixed effects variables, which allows us to control for most of the unobservables. Then we have the first baseline results. In this case, we see that, for example, for the traditional gravity model with the distance, contiguity, etc., colonial relationship, etc., we find no evidence of a pull effect. However, when we go into the two-way fixed effects or high-dimensional fixed effects, we find an evidence and of a significant in both cases. Also, so it means that the regularization programs increase the migration inflow, which is our outcome variable, by 45% in this case. And we also want to highlight that the required months of illegal resident, the deterrent is significant. In this case, it's not significant, but the coefficient is similar, so we have larger standard errors, but it could be plausible that at least is similar magnitude, no? However, and also we want to highlight that the network is relevant. It's always like I think one of the most important variables for explaining migration is the already network of this nationality in destination country. However, even though we are really confident with the high dimensional fixed effects in this setting with 58,000 observations, we still know that we are not addressing endogeneity problems. And then that's why we try to address it with a strategy by Nagengas and Yotov, which is the heterogeneity, robust, staggered, differing, and difference for gravity settings. And this is important because it allows us to keep the PPML, to keep the high dimensional fixed effects, and to add the different indifference. And of course, these treatments are not happening the same year, so it's important that we have this alternative of staggered, and that this is solving the problem of not comparing with treated as not treated for control, so and adjusting for the length of the treatment, etc. No? But let's focus on the model. So they create this. We're still in a PPML setting. We have the high dimensional fixed effects, and we have our the Terran variable, and they build this variable, which is a dummy, taking the value of 1 for whenever the IJ country belongs to the cohort G equals to Q, which is this cohort is defined by when the first treatment occurred in the year Q. No? Let's say the first regularization of this IG country pair occurred in the year 2000, and then it remained treated in the post-treatment years S until T. It means from the year 2000, for example, until 2022, which is our data sample, and we have the previous period of 1995 until 2000 as a pre-treatment period, no? And then the idea is that they sum all of these coefficients, and they treat all of the regularizations implemented in the same year as the same treatment for all the countries treated in that year. And then they summarize the effects of all of the subsequent years. So this become 2000, 2000, then 2000, 2001, 2000, 2002, 2000, 2003, and etc. until 2022. I hope it's not so confusing. I try to do it the less confusing way possible. And of course, as they are taking into consideration only the first regularization, we create a new variable which is taking into account all of the subsequent regularizations, the number 2, 3, 4, 5, and we use it as a control, and of course, as I told you, the other variables. Then, as I told you already, the summation of all coefficients is the average treatment of the treated for all subsequent years of the first regularization implemented. Then, here are the results. No? We find that and we focus in the equation in the column 1 as our most relevant specification, where because we are comparing with the not yet and the never treated, and then here we find that pool effect of 30% increasing the migration inflow in the future migration. No? Then notice that it's a little bit lower than the high dimensional fixed effects without different diff that we found before, and is considering only the first one. No? Notice that the subsequent general regularizations are not significant in this case. And I try to use like an example to notice the magnitude of this. And for example, we can see that in an imaginary country of 100 million population, the mean inflow from E to J in our sample is 7,000. Is the rate in our sample, and the additional inflow would be 2,100 new additional migrants. So we will have, instead of 7,000, we will have 9,133 migrants instead of 7,000. And I think an additional interesting finding that somehow I am so somehow proud of that we included it and that we can give this information for policymakers is that effectively the deterrent requirement of the requirement of the number of months is effectively a deterrent. And we can say that according to the coefficients, we can say that the pool effect is fully mitigated in 8 months. So if the regularization program set at least 8 months of requirement, then this deterrent fully mitigates the pool effect. So, and this is quite relevant because, for example, as I told you before, the average months implemented in the sample is 33, and for all of these programs in the sample, that, I mean, for all of the observations that implement that with a regularization program, 46% of them are above 8. So it means that, of course, 57% of 53% of observations are not are below this. So effectively, in more than half of the regularization programs, in the observations we have, there is a pool effect not fully mitigated by this, no? So
Sorry, Paul.
If
I can interrupt you, Jesus
yes.
is asking, what is the source of the dependent variable if they are gross flows from the OECD dataset?
Sorry, repeat the question.
The source of the dependent variable, if they are gross flows, gross inflows.
Exactly, gross inflows, and the source is the OECD country. Thank you for the question because I omit to mention the source of the before. So it's the inflow of migrants into the destination country from this origin, and the source is the OECD countries, the OECD webpage, you know, data set. Okay, then this is like our main results. We tested for the placebo test in order to see if there was like a pre-trend. We find that there's no significance, so it's not a strong proof that there is no pre-trends, but it helps to clarify. Then also we tested several heterogeneity options, and the one more relevant is that it is the regularization program is significant when the network is larger than the median. You know? So when this diaspora is already larger than the median, then they do react to the regularization programs. In the case of below the median networks, diasporas are smaller than the median, there we find no evidence. It's not necessary that there is no effect, but we found no evidence. And so we can say that it seems to be driven by the already large diasporas. However, we wanted to do some robustness checks. In the previous definitive model, we are considering this staggered format of the data of our treatment, but we are assuming in the previous definitive, we are assuming that the treatment lasts forever. So a country like Spain that regularized it in 2005, the treatment is still in effect in 2022. And we could plausibly assume that it's not true. And then we would like to assume a treatment that is not permanent, no? And also, and then if the treatment is not permanent, then we would like to assume that the treatment could reappear, as in many cases, many countries has several regularization programs. Then we need a different indifference for a staggered switching on and off. Oh, sorry for the typo here. a treatment that is switching on and off and is staggered. So, and thankfully, sorry for the French speakers, but I will not try to pronounce the name of, well, yes, Charles Martin and the whole fully. Sorry for my French. And they did this different difference for multiple group and time dynamic, and we try to implement it. Because we believe that this option is plausible, and this will be an interesting robustness check to our previous specification. Then we do this event study, and we find that with this command allows you to set the already placebos, etc. And then we find that there is no pre-trend, but in the midterm, after 3 years, there is a significant effect. This somehow we can assume that is um, somehow confirming our previous results with the previous strategy, and even changing the strategy, we find that there is a pull effect. In this case, we are not, we use as a control the number of months, but we cannot see the variable here, no? And of course, we have some limitations. The main one is, as the people from the audience asked, the dependent variable immigration inflow is a proxy for illegal migration inflow. So we don't have, at least I don't have the trustable source for illegal migration inflows, and I'd rather use this migration inflow from the OECD as a proxy for illegal migration, no? And but also because it's answering somehow the impact of future migration, no? But of course, this is a very important limitation. The other very important limitation is that our variable is a dummy. And then what happens, what's the problem with this, is that it is equalizing two regularization programs that are one benefiting 600 people and the other benefiting 500,000 people. And then, of course, the impact of both programs is hard to be equalized, and so we can assume that there is a possible measurement error. So another way to say that is that the intensity of the program, of the treatment, is not considered. So I think this will be highly relevant for future research, no? So, but this is, of course, a very important limitation of our paper. Finally, we can say that we are adding to the literature in this discussion, and we kind of propose an answer to this research gap of this discussion in the literature, and we can say that there is a pool effect in average for our sample, ceteris paribus, etc., of 30%, and we confirm this in the PPML high-dimensional fixed effects, in the two-way fixed effects, in the Nagengas and Yotov strategy, and in the version of the event study, no? So we have, in fact, let's say 4 different strategies, no? And we could assume that it seems to be driven by origins with already large networks. So it's not increasing already the amount of people. So this is kind of similar with what some findings that Maida say, that is increasing the effect of other factors, no? For example, in this case, is increasing the effect of the networks. And One thing that we like to highlight is that this is this this full effect is deterred by this requirement of the number of months required as undocumented migrant in order to be beneficiary. So I think this characteristic of regularization programs is very useful for policymakers in order to reduce the pull effect. So far, this is what I have. I hope my ideas were delivered properly. I'm sorry for my English, which is not perfect. And I am really looking forward for your comments and yes, for your comments. So should I leave this here or should I stop sharing?
Yeah, please stop sharing. First of all, thank you for your great talk, Paul. So next we're going to have a 10-minute discussion by Shanta.
Exactly.
And then you will have time to answer the questions and comments, and maybe we have a few extra minutes for comments from the general audience.
Okay. Yeah, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Paul. Paul, is that correct? Am I pronouncing it right? Paul. Okay, that was a great presentation. That was a great presentation. I also want to thank the seminar organizers for giving me the opportunity to read this paper. I really enjoyed reading this paper. It was a very nice paper. So okay. So just a quick overview of the paper. The paper looks at whether regularization programs act as pull factors for new migration, with a specific focus on OECD countries. I think the paper uses a really cool, really novel and comprehensive data set, the RegMig data set, and also really nice uh, causal strategies, the staggered difference in differences, which sort of really strengthens your causal findings as well. The paper also finds that regularization programs do act as pull factors, increasing migration inflows, especially from origin country that already have strong established migrant network at the destination. So overall, it's a very timely and a methodologically a very strong paper, I would say. The data set that you compile is very cool and novel, and it allows for a cross-country comparison as well, which I think we have never seen before. I could be wrong, but I think we have never seen this kind of data set before. Overall, it's a very well motivated and a very well executed paper with a very clear sort of contribution to it. I do have a few comments. I hope that would be useful for you. Um, so starting with your figure 3 in the paper, where you use an event style study to show that the pull effect is the strongest, I think 2 years after the implementation of the policy, um, which is great. I think this result is very interesting, and I was just wondering if you could maybe just extend the event study window a little bit, maybe to show where this effect sort of plateaus, or maybe it even fades out eventually, to see whether maybe you could interpret it as how this pull factor, the how the persistence of the pull factor sort of fades out eventually. And this also helps us understand the saturation point and would also be very beneficial from a policy point of view. Second, coming over to spillover effects, I was wondering if you could see whether implementation of a regularization policy in country A sort of affects migration inflows in country B. Um, yeah, in country B, maybe a spillover effects, maybe the migrants are sort of, they exhibit anticipatory behavior. Maybe they think that maybe they think that country B will also implement the same sort of regularization policies. And even if you find like sort of null effects with these spillover effects, you can also use them as validity checks in your paper. Um, Next, I wanted to talk about your heterogeneity analysis, specifically your migrant network heterogeneity analysis, where you use where you divide your sample into above median and below median. And I was wondering why use above median and below median and sort of kill the variation? Can you not just use an interaction term between the first regularization and the log of network size? It might provide a more cleaner and more precise estimate. That's what I think. Yeah. Coming on to heterogeneity analysis, digging a bit deeper on that, your heterogeneity analysis on distance between the origin country and the destination country shows no effect. And I was wondering why do you think that is? Is it because it's a very interesting result, and maybe you could just interpret this result a little bit more explicitly in the paper? Does this sort of show sort of a substitution effect between maybe the migrants are willing to travel a bit farther, if that means that there's a larger community of migrants in that country? So it could maybe show like a substitution effect over there. Similarly, in your income heterogeneity also, you look at income levels in the origin as well as the destination countries. And I was wondering maybe if you could also look at unemployment in the origin as well as destination countries, maybe both at the origin and destination countries, and maybe because if the pull effect is stronger when unemployment levels are high, it could also show sort of a labor demand mechanism. That's what I was thinking. Finally, I was also wondering if regularization effect is stable throughout over time, because there are periods of economic instability, maybe at a particular country or even worldwide. So maybe you could examine these periods of instability and whether these have any effects on the pull factor as well. For example, you could look at the EU integration or the 2008 global financial crisis. If the pull effect sort of reduces during these times or increases maybe. Then sort of for more broader suggestions, I was thinking about the mechanisms for this paper, and I thought about political conditions at origin as well, because regularization may be more sort of attractive to migrants who are from conflicted areas or from authoritarian, or who are escaping authoritarian rule. So maybe you could look at whether these countries have increased migrant flows as well, or yeah. Then I also think your result on the 8-month threshold was very interesting, and I think you should highlight that a little bit more in your paper, because right now I think it's only in the I found it only in the conclusion, if I'm not mistaken. But I think that's one of the most policy relevant results in the paper, and you should really highlight that result. I'm so sorry. I also think you should highlight the contribution of your data set, the RegMig data set. That it's a very, I think I'm repeating myself again, but it's a very cool data set, and I think you should highlight your contribution on the data part as well. Then finally, I would also suggest sort of connecting your findings to more broader ongoing policy debates in Europe or throughout the world. I think that would make the paper a little bit more policy relevant as well. Yeah, that's it. Should I stop
Thank
sharing?
you, Shanta. Now, Paul, you will have some time to discuss these comments. Yes, and after that, maybe we have a few more minutes for general audience questions.
Shanta, I am really thankful because very interesting comments, and I like how was received the paper by you, that you also, I mean, of course, I am so excited with my data set, and so when other people see it and they find it interesting, so yeah, so I am also so excited, no? So definitely trying to answer as fast as possible. The is your point of how if the impact dissipates in time in the Venn study is relevant. So I have checked it until 7 years, but I don't remember because I mean when you are calibrating this, you have to change a lot of stuff, and then I have to in this final setting check with more with effects in longer period, no? So thank you for that comment. And the spillovers as a control, so how this is affecting in the other countries is not directly considered somehow. How other policies are affecting in other countries affecting this country pair origin destination is somehow considered is included by the multilateral resistance of the high dimensional fixed effects. But I understand your point is not that. Your point is to look at the impact on the other countries. If Spain regularize, maybe some migrants are expecting that France or Portugal are also regularizing. So I should look at it. So it's interesting point. Oh, I understand my letter. So this question, I don't understand what I wrote. And you say, for example, dividing the sample between is of course is not the ideal dividing the sample, but this command um, is not allowing me the Nagengas and Yotov is not allowing me to interact because they are so. And then I did the interactions in the normal PPML high dimensional fixed effects, but I didn't want to use them in the heterogeneity analysis because we are relying in this command, no? In this diff and diff, staggered diff in heterogeneity, robust staggered diff in diff. That's why we are not using the interactions in the PPML to explain heterogeneity because we wanted to rely more in the model that is solving endogeneity, no? And of course, it's a big problem mainly because of when you divide the sample in two, then the sample is too short, and then you lose power. And in some cases, as you saw in the paper, there are no standard errors being generated. So I cannot say anything about this regression in particular when we don't have like the full equation, the coefficients generated, no? So, but definitely I would like to have a better way to explain heterogeneity, and then explains kind of the distance, no results. But I think what is more important in migration is always the network, and then that's why we found results there. And if there is a large network of let's say Ecuadorians in Spain, even though it's farther than Chile, they will rather go to Spain than to Chile, for example, and that's uh, because of the network and the regularization program is being implemented. I would like to look at your idea of looking at even though we are controlling for origin time and destination time, so the unemployment problem in origin and destination is controlled, but I understand your point that looking at heterogeneity for high unemployment countries or low unemployment countries or countries shifting with a shock on unemployment. So I found it very interesting point. I could do that. And ta, 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 ta. And I think we can do similar thing with conflict. And well, I think more or less everything is answered. So we have only 9 minutes left. So I would like to other people
Thank you so much.
giving opinions.
Yes, so let's see if there's any questions from the chat, from the general audience.
One raised hand.
Yes, Mitali. Sorry, I didn't see you.
Yeah, that's okay. No, super interesting paper. I really liked reading it, and I also found the data set really impressive. I wonder if there's something that you can say about the selection of migrants given this pull factor. So you sort of give the story in the beginning that regularization programs sort of might make a country seem more accepting, and so that might lead to more illegal immigrants potentially coming in. But I wonder if you can also, instead of just looking at the dependent variable of like total migration inflows, if you can look at particular visa classes, so asylum seekers, or maybe look at like students. So it may not necessarily just be like all illegal immigrants proxied for migration inflows, but maybe there's something to say about the type of migrant that is immigrating. So I wonder if you could look at other types of dependent variables based on visa class.
No, and definitely quick answer is that a lot of this pull factor that we are seeing in this data set, in fact, is family reunification. So once you regularize, you take some time to get a better job. Then when you get a formal better job, better paid, and you are established, then you bring your family. And in another paper, I am finding the impact on remittances. So maybe I will take this other paper to the Madrid conference and workshop. And yes, definitely, I think is a lot of it's explained by this family reunification. We have another questions of Jesus Fernandez, which is cited in my paper. So
Yes, Jesus.
Hi, Dominic. Can you hear me?
Yes.
yes.
Hi, Paul. Nice to meet you. Very nice presentation, and I agree with your discussion that this is a great contribution that you have here with this regularization dataset. I look forward to reading this carefully, and it's a very nice contribution. I have two comments. The first one is very related to the one that was just made. It's about the dependent variable. So one concern about your dependent variable is that it may refer only to legal migrants. So in a sense, what you find could be mechanical. Okay, these guys were undocumented. Suddenly they are regularized. So they didn't show up in the statistics before. Now they show up. And this is what you're finding. So what I would do about this is a couple of things. One is to check with other data sets like like it was just suggested, asylum seeker students, or more generally with net flows from United Nations, if you want to stay in the cross-country setting, or these measures of gross flows that ABLE has created out of the net flows. So it would be interesting to look how your variables correlate, how your results change when you use alternative data sets, where it is more likely that undocumented migrants are better measured. Because we know that, for example, in the OECD data set, for example, the US data are really bad, are only regular migrants. The Spanish data are very good. They include both regular and irregular. So another option is to use different flags for different data qualities. Okay, so that's one comment. And the other one is about your main specification. So I would prefer, I mean, in your current main specification, you have this destination time fixed effects. What they do is you are basically taking out all the blanket regularizations. Yes, let's say like the Spanish one. But this is
Exactly.
all that people think about when they think about regularizations, right? So I'm wondering whether you shouldn't be using this as your main result. Just drop your destination time fixed effects and focus on or give us different results. Because what you are finding right now, the results that you gave us today is about origin destination specific regularizations, right? So, and when policymakers think about this, they are thinking about the other ones. So that's it. Excellent job.
Good, Jesus. It's clear that you know the topic, and yes, you're right. So I would try to use alternative data sets for inflows. However, I think it's not mechanic because as we are talking about inflow, so these people that is regularized, I think it's not counted as inflow because they are not arriving. They could be accounted into the network now, but the OECD data set is not clear in the definition of how 100%, I am not sure this what you say, for example, about the difference between US and Spain, and I think it's also a measurement error. And your second point is totally true. Effectively, we are capturing the impact of the regularizations of when the destination country is not targeting all origin countries, which is not the exception necessarily, but it's not the majority of the cases. The majority of the cases is, as you mentioned, the 2005, for example, Spanish, who was for all migrants, but even though you have previously one for only for Ecuadorian, for example. And then we are measuring the Ecuadorian style regularization and not the 2005 regularization. However, we think it is somehow a good measure of the pull factor, no? But of course, your point is 100% true. Thank you very much, and I think we can keep contact to keep talking about this topic, Jesus.
Definitely. Thanks.